Hotels exist in a strange space, temporary homes, shared walls, strangers sleeping feet from you behind a door that locks from both sides. Tonight I have 3 stories from people who checked in and found that something had already settled in before them. The third story, I want to warn you about the third story. It involves a child's drawing found under a mattress, and what was drawn on it is the reason the person who sent it to me still hasn't returned to that city. Stay with me. The guest in for 12. I was in Columbus, Ohio for a work conference in late October. One of those mid-range business hotels, nothing special, nothing alarming. The kind of place you forget the moment you leave. I checked in around 11 p.m. My room was on the 4th floor, end of the hall. I remember thinking it was quieter than I expected for a hotel with a conference going on downstairs. I showered, set my phone on the nightstand, and got into bed. At some point I woke up. No alarm. No noise. I checked my phone, 3:14 in the morning. The bathroom light was on. I was certain I had turned it off. I'm the kind of person who double-checks those things. But I told myself I was tired, that I'd made a mistake. I got up to turn it off. The mirror was fogged. Fully steamed over, like someone had just taken a hot shower. I hadn't showered in the last hour. I'd been asleep. I stood there for a moment. I looked at the towel rack. The towel I'd used earlier was hanging where I'd left it, slightly damp. But the hand towel next to it, the small one, still folded when I arrived, was now unfolded. Laid flat over the rack. Used. I checked the door. Deadbolt. Still locked. Security latch. Still on. I went back to bed and didn't sleep. In the morning I went down to the front desk and asked, casually, whether anyone else had access to my room. A maintenance visit, maybe. A cleaning mix-up. The woman at the desk typed something. Looked at the screen. Then at me. She said there had been a note on room 412, flagged by the previous cleaning staff. She started to explain what the note said, and then she stopped. She looked at her manager across the lobby. Then back at me. She said, "You know what, I'm sure it was nothing. Let me upgrade your room." I didn't ask again. I took the upgrade. I checked out the next morning and drove home the same night instead of staying for the conference dinner. I've thought about that fogged mirror more times than I can count. The temperature it takes to steam a mirror like that. The amount of time someone would have had to be running that water. I was asleep 5 feet away. And whatever the note said about that room, I've decided I don't want to know. The next story comes from a couple who had every reason to believe it was going to be a perfect night. She knocked at 2 a.m. My husband and I drove up to Asheville, North Carolina for our anniversary. Late September. We'd booked a room at one of those restored historic inns near downtown, original hardwood floors, clawfoot tub, the whole thing. It was genuinely beautiful. We'd been out for dinner and drinks and got back to the room around midnight. We were happy. It was a good night. We were asleep by 12:30. At 2:04 in the morning, I know the time because I looked at my phone when it woke me, there was a knock at our door. Soft. Slow. 3 knocks. My husband didn't wake up. I lay there, waiting. Sometimes guests knock on the wrong room. It happens. I waited to see if it would happen again. It did. 3 knocks. Same pace. Same pressure. I got up and went to the door. I looked through the peephole. A woman. Late 30s maybe. Dark hair. She was wearing a bathrobe, the same style as the ones folded in our room. She was staring directly at the peephole. Not at the door. At the peephole. I didn't open it. I asked, through the door, if she needed help. She said, very quietly, "I just want to come back in." I told her this wasn't her room. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, I know. I stepped back. I woke my husband. He looked through the peephole. No one was there. In the morning we mentioned it to the innkeeper, a woman in her 60s who had run the place for years. She listened carefully. She asked what the woman looked like. I described her. The innkeeper was quiet for a long moment. She said, "What room are you in?" We told her. She nodded slowly. She said sometimes guests in that particular room reported disturbances. She said it in the same tone you'd use to say a faucet sometimes drips. She didn't offer to move us. She just refilled my coffee and changed the subject. We left that afternoon instead of the next morning. I've tried to come up with a rational explanation. A sleepwalking guest. A woman locked out of a different room. Someone confused, or drunk, or both. But she was staring at the peephole. Not the door. The peephole. That's the part one can't explain away. Because to stare directly at a peephole, you have to know someone is looking back. What you just heard is unsettling on its own, but the story we're ending on is the one that stayed with me since it arrived in my inbox. What was under the mattress? I was in Portland, Oregon. Solo trip, early February. I'm a freelance photographer and I'd driven up for a week-long project, street documentation, nothing glamorous. I booked a small hotel near the Pearl District. Budget place. 3 stars, generous. The room was fine. Clean enough. I'd stayed in worse. On the second night I was moving my bed away from the wall. I sleep better with airflow on both sides, it's a habit, and when I lifted the edge of the mattress to shift it, something slid out from underneath and fell to the floor. A piece of paper. Folded once. I assumed it was an old receipt. Or a laundry slip. Something mundane that had been there for months, missed by housekeeping. I picked it up and unfolded it. It was a drawing. Done in pencil. A child's drawing, you could tell by the proportions, the way hands were rendered as round stumps, the way perspective didn't quite work. It showed a hotel room. That much was clear. A bed. A nightstand. A window. And in the bed, a figure. Sleeping. Drawn in that simple way kids draw sleeping people, with the closed eye curve. Standing beside the bed was another figure. Taller. No face drawn, just a blank oval. Arms at its sides. I stood there for a moment. Then I looked at the window in the drawing. The window had something written next to it. Small. In a child's careful handwriting. A room number. My room number. I sat down on the bed. I told myself it was a coincidence. Hotels repeat room numbers. A kid had been in this room before, drawn something, a nightmare, a game, something kids do, and it had been under the mattress ever since. That was possible. That was the rational explanation. But then I looked more carefully at the sleeping figure in the drawing. The figure in the bed had a camera on the nightstand beside it. I had a camera on my nightstand. I turned the paper over. On the back, in the same handwriting, were 3 words. I'm not going to say what they were. I've told 2 people in my life what those 3 words were, and both times I've regretted it, not because they didn't believe me, but because of the way their faces changed when I said it. I took the paper to the front desk. The night manager looked at it for a long time. He asked where I found it. I told him. He went to the back office. He was gone for 11 minutes, I counted, because I had nothing else to do. When he came back, he said the room had been unoccupied for several weeks before my booking. He said no children's reservations were showing in the system under that room for the past year. He asked if he could keep the drawing. I said no. I don't know why I said no. I should have left it there. I should have let him take it and never thought about it again. But I took it with me when I left the next morning. I still have it. It's in a folder in my filing cabinet, face down. I haven't looked at it since that night. I don't know who drew it. I don't know when. I don't know how a child could have drawn something that specific in a room I'd only just checked into. And I have never found an answer that makes the camera on the nightstand make sense. I probably never will. 3 hotels. 3 people who checked in expecting nothing more than a bed and a quiet night. What they found instead, I'll let you sit with that. I want to ask you something specific tonight. Have you ever been in a hotel room and felt, in that particular stillness of an unfamiliar place, that the room knew something about you? Leave it in the comments. I read them. New stories arrive every day. Subscribe if you want them. And remember, the next time you pull back a hotel mattress to adjust it, you may want to prepare yourself for what you find underneath.